Golden Stallions here with you, for another little Q&A, and of course recording from the dungeon, as it were, which is where I spend a good chunk of my time, actually. Usually not recording. That's often done in the studio, the Sovryn Studios, or the Stephanie Murphy Studios, whichever they end up, it gets called all different kinds of things. But whenever I have to do a little bonus show or something and Stephanie's up working in the studio, well, I come down to the dungeon, I break out the old blue Yeti, and away we go, and I get to do a little Q&A for you. Still working on, I know I've mentioned it, but it's something we're still working pretty heavily on, is in building a second studio, actually right here in the dungeon. Can't be too big, because I don't want it to get in the way of working out. I mean, what's the point to saying things if you're not going to live forever, and if you don't work out, well, you might not live forever. I know Bill Gates had that whole equation that he did where, the amount of time spent eating right and spent working out actually equates to, if you just didn't work out and went ahead and ate pizza all day long, it'd be the kind of the same amount of time. But I think we're to the point to where we're figuring out a lot of things to where, eating right and, and working out are, a huge part in really allowing you perhaps, to live in, and become a part of the centenarians. In fact, that's an interesting metric. I'm getting way off the topic from where I need to go in these Q&As, but I'm just going to say it this quick. That's an interesting metric, is that there are more centenarians, that being people that are 100 years and older, in the world today than there have ever been. And it's by a long shot. It's orders of magnitude higher than it was even a decade ago. It's really, really crazy, that metric. Which is a good thing, because, the longer we all can live, and if we, can have our wits about us, which a lot of these centenarians seem to do so, which I've met a few, and they certainly have it together upstairs, no doubt about that, then that, all the better we get to take advantage of life extension technologies, and all the rest, and at worst, perhaps even cryonics, which I'm a big supporter of. So anyway, first off, second off now, I guess, I want to say thank you to all of the new Patreon subscribers. We keep getting more and more every week. We are almost to $200 of our $500 goal. We are getting there. The average person is donating way more than $1, which is all that I ask, and I am so honored by that. A lot of people have upgraded their patronage, their subscriptions, and that just means the world to me. And so many people have emailed me and messaged me saying how much value they find in the Q&A, and of course how much value they find in Sovryn Tech in general. And I'm really honored by that. So thank you so much for being here. I don't want to spend too much more time on that because there's a few questions I want to get to. One of them is going to take some length, and I want to be able to get into all of it because it's kind of a very important topic. It's a great question to ask, really. But before we get into that, how about we do a little Sovryn Tech secret, huh? This one's not so secret, and believe me, I have plenty more, but I'm going to give you a not so terribly juicy one, this week. But a lot of people had asked pretty much every week, hey, could you tell us a little secret about something you've done with Sovryn Tech that you didn't tell people about, or that's kind of hidden in the machinations of what makes the podcast go round and round? Woo! Absolutely, I can do that. Here's, maybe I'll give you two, but here's one for starters. And this is one that's kind of out in the open, because I've mentioned it a few times, that there has almost been a set quota with Sovryn Tech to where every episode I have to mention Star Trek. Now, I've spent, maybe not this past week, but maybe the past couple weeks, I had spent covering Star Trek, so I'm not going to, go into why is Star Trek so goddamn great right now. I'm not going to, which it is, but I'm not going to go into that right now. But I just want to say that, yeah, and I've pretty well kept up with that, where I've either made a quote or I've, referenced a story or something. Some kind of Star Trek content has been in pretty much every episode of Sovryn Tech. In fact, the initials for the show, while often I call it SVT, capital S, small v, capital T, is, for a lot of people, it's just ST, which I very much did on purpose to mean Star Trek. And I've mentioned that on the show Sovryn Tech proper in the past. So, that's not necessarily anything new. But that's one thing. But Oh boy, if you listen to, let me tell you something about Star Trek. Okay. And I haven't made that 100% on all the bonus episodes, but on Sovereign Tech proper, the main episodes, I absolutely make it a case. One of the, something I mentioned on Sex and Science Hour was that I had bought some things, that I like to buy things for the lovely and hyper-intelligent Dr. Stephanie Murphy, who is, of course, my girlfriend. We're going on 5 years. I can't believe that. We're going on coming up in, I guess it would be, I guess it'd be April, May, somewhere around that time. We never really set a hard date on it, but we'll have been together for about 5 years coming in 2017. That is mind-boggling to me and wonderful. What an amazing time. What an amazing woman. But I'm not here to talk about that. You've heard me say that kind of thing plenty of times, even though I could never get enough of saying it. But I mentioned on Sex and Science Hour that I like to surprise her. I don't let her know that I'm buying something, and I buy things. And I bought something for her off of ThinkGeek, and it's a Deanna Troi, as in the counselor from Star Trek: The Next Generation. It's a Deanna Troi. It's kind of like a swim shirt designed, kind of to block you from the sun or whatever. So it's something that can get wet or whatever. But it's just like the top. So ThinkGeek, and I talked about this on Sovereign Tech, I think. ThinkGeek released over the summer, they released a swimsuit line for Star Trek. And while for the guys, they didn't really sell anything interesting, for the ladies, they had these awesome one-piece bathing suits that largely looked like the uniform from the Next Generation as you remember it, not like the Deep Space Nine or Voyager uniform, but where the colors are more pronounced. And I thought those were so sexy. So I didn't end up getting her one of those because by the time I could get my hands on them, they only had the gold left, and I like to get her the blue because she's a doctor, she's a scientist, a doctor, and. So, but what I did get her was that, in that swimsuit line, they had they had like kind of this cover that you could, that you could buy that made it, that looked like, it could go over any swimsuit you had, that looked like Deanna Troi's, like the top of her jumpsuit from, say, like season 3 and season 4, before they finally dressed her like a human being and gave her a uniform. But anyway, I got her that, and I took some pictures of her in it. And I shared one of them on social media, and did she look good? And a lot of people obviously agreed because this has gotten a lot of likes, a few hundred anyway. She fantastic. She looks so hot. And admittedly, yeah, I bought the gift for her, but am I enjoying this gift as much as anybody? Oh hell. She looks so good. Obviously I fell in love with that woman for her, seriously, for her mentality, like straight up, no doubt about that. And for her, her attitude and honestly, her empathy, which, she looks, when she puts this thing on that I bought, she looks just like, in fact, a lot of people did like some comparison shots, and holy fuck, she looks just like Marina Sirtis in many ways. Right down to the smile, the whole thing. It's really, really impressive. But anyway, what am I supposed to say? My girlfriend's fucking hot. Okay. She's hot as hell. And she looks so good in it. And even the ladies were running wild when they saw this picture. And what a pleasure. So anyway, maybe at some point I'll get her one of those swimsuits too, because, I'll tell you, as a guy that appreciates, showing skin, myself included. It's not just like, I just want to see women. The whole world can be nude for all I care. It doesn't, regardless of gender. But I thought the swimsuits that ThinkGeek designed, they were so good. I was like, these should have been the actual uniforms for Star Trek, for the Next Generation. It's like that would have been great, and have the guys walking around in Speedos. I don't give a shit. Come on. Most of the time they're on the Enterprise, right? So everything's temperature controlled. It's not like, It's not like they're beaming down to planets all the time. And even if they are, well, I mean, a long-running thing in Star Trek is to have away team uniforms that are specifically designed for away teams. You can think of, most of the Star Trek movies had this. Star Trek the Motion Picture had it. Wrath of Khan had it. Lots of aspects of Star Trek would have away team uniforms. Even Enterprise, the show Enterprise with, Scott Bakula, it had like an Enterprise, they had like more of a jacket uniform, or they had the desert uniforms and all this. So fine, when they go to planets where, the weather is not so, enjoyable, I guess, it needs something different, then have an away team uniform, So anyway, I think all that shit's so hot. I really wish, if you haven't, go to ThinkGeek and just look at their Star Trek line. You'll see exactly everything I'm talking about, and just great. In fact, some people are asking me about, because I also ordered something for myself. They have a hoodie, a Starfleet uniform hoodie. Now, what they had, they have a few different models. They had this hoodie where it looks like the Next Generation uniform, where it has the full color in it, the blue, gold, and red. But then they also had one that they called like a Starfleet tactical hoodie, where it had the gray, which is, as far as like with, the Next Generation movies and everything, that's sort of where we left off, and with Deep Space Nine and all that, to where that's what they had. They had like where it had the gray shoulders, and that's the one that I got, the one with the gray shoulders. And I shared that on social media as well, and a lot of people really liked it. And thank you. And if you want to get that, that's also on ThinkGeek. ThinkGeek is not a sponsor, folks. Okay, I'm just telling you about all this shit, and I promise we're going to get into some great Q&A here. But another thing I wanted to tell about that I, like 2 weeks ago, I wanted to tell people about this. I did get a new sponsor, and that is not that I'm going to run the sponsors in the bonus episodes here, but I just want to let you know about the sponsor and kind of what's going on around it. And the sponsor is CryptoCompare.com. Now, this is a genuinely great website. I am super particular in who I take as far as a sponsor goes. And CryptoCompare.com is pretty much a site that collates a lot of the different, pricing for various cryptocurrencies. It also, does rankings and puts together like wallets, like what are the best wallets out there. For all different kinds of cryptocurrencies. It's just a great resource if you're keeping track of cryptocurrencies. It's honestly, it might be the best one I've seen on the web. It is so good. So they got in touch with me. They love this show. They got in touch with me and they said, "Hey, we'd love to sponsor you, and we talked it over." And and they were just so on board and so gracious. With how much they appreciated the show and what gets done on Sovryn Tech. So I really appreciated that. I just want you to know that when I do mention CryptoCompare.com, it is a sponsor. I mentioned it last week that it's a sponsor, but they don't have like a hard requirement on me to where I need to do a 30-second or a minute some odd ad. Okay, they just want to make sure they get mentioned and all this stuff. And I'm not doing native advertising because I'm letting you know, and in fact, it's in the show notes, that CryptoCompare.com is one of the sponsors. They are in the appendix, okay? But anyway, I like to keep things on the up and up, and I am so honored that I get sponsors for Sovryn Tech and everything that Sovryn Tech does and stands for. That means the world to me, because these sponsors, and please appreciate the sponsors as well, because first off, they afford me more time to be able to work on Sovryn Tech, just as you do, Patreon subscribers. Second off, they really, I make it very clear to these people that I will not, my mouth doesn't get bought. Okay, I am going to talk about whatever I want to talk about. I'm going to say whatever I want to say, regardless of how anybody, and my sponsors feel about it. Okay, I am going to do that. And so there's no signing. It's just, it's just a golden handshake, effectively, a digital one, because I'm whatever contracts, blah, blah. It's just a golden handshake. And it's like, you understand this, that this is what I do, and it's worked out very well for me so far. And so these sponsors are great because they are in no way infringing upon freedom of speech, or, because a lot of sponsors do this to where, I've talked about this on Sovryn Tech before, to where, take Northrop Grumman, okay? Why the hell does Northrop Grumman need to sponsor any television show? They don't. But they're constantly listed as sponsors for television shows. They run ads and all stuff. They don't. Who are they going to advertise to? I mean, it's not like corporate heads that want to work with Northrop Grumman from other businesses are watching Wheel of Fortune. No, it's because they're buying the fucking silence of the networks and of the shows. Okay? So I won't have that on Sovryn Tech. And so do appreciate the sponsors that come on board because they know that. Like they get that, and they know that, they know that I'm not a loose cannon. I don't like to use that terms, but I'm the golden stallion and I'm a wild one. Okay. And I'm going to say what I want, and I don't edit myself, and I don't really have any filters. So anyway, so there you have it. Now, okay. So I told you Sovryn Tech secret. So I actually already did start getting into the questions. Good. We just kind of went through kind of a circuitous route to get to the next one, maybe. But yeah, so the Star Trek thing, I think most people knew that, but I do have it as like a goal in my mind to mention Sovryn Tech at least once. Pretty much every episode, somehow it comes up. And again, just real quick, the reason for that is that without Star Trek, I don't think there'd really be much of a tech world. Not like we know it. Not a lot of the good parts. In fact, I've heard of a lot of VCs who are a little more intelligent. I don't get very excited about VCs. I think a lot of them are morons, but there's a couple, there's a few out there that I think have their head on straight. And there's some VCs now that they are making it their expressed goal that they are looking to invest in projects that are bringing the Star Trek future, that they are building Star Trek. Hell yes. Okay. Just understand, I just hope they understand that really everything that Google and a lot of these other companies want to do is bringing us the Borg, not Star Trek. But anyway, that's a whole other subject. So yeah, I mean, and most people that are into tech, they got there through Star Trek. I mean, that's why I say the tech world wouldn't be the same because I don't think as many people would be interested. Not that I think it's a problem if you're not into Star Trek. I mean, I don't get it, but I understand that not everybody is. But whatever. Anyway, let's get into another question. Let's get into some, you're tired of me running my mouth about all that shit. Okay, we got a couple tech questions. One's kind of a tech culture question, which I really love doing those. Why do you, in fact, let me tell you why so Mike Elgin, a journalistic hero of mine and someone who's been a guest on Sovryn Tech in the past. And I mean, this guy is one of the top tech journalists in the world. That's just how it is. He made a claim that you have three types of tech journalists. Okay. One of them is the type that does the breakdowns. Okay. Where like they do the real technical breakdowns. Now I can do that kind of journalism. Sometimes I get into that on the bonus episodes more. Sovryn Tech in general, I don't often get into it. Sometimes I'd get into it with the Q&A. I don't get into it too deeply because I know I have a very broad audience. Okay, so I don't always get into the nitty gritty. I can do it, as well as anybody can, believe me. Okay, I've been in this stuff for way too long and have been knee deep, in dev and everything I've been doing it forever. So I could do that. And actually, you can tell me if that's kind of more of the stuff you were looking to hear or you're looking to hear at times, let me know because I can get into that. But anyway, so there's the breakdown kind of tech journalist. Then there's the tech journalist that rubs elbows. There's the tech journalist that is like the darling of various companies and gets all the exclusives, and kind of reports more on, what's hot and happening with various companies and all this. Then there's the third type. And the third type, and I love the fact that it wasn't binary, that there wasn't two, there's three. The third type is the kind that talks about the tech culture, that is kind of the 40-foot view of whatever's happening in technology. That, from the beginning of Sovryn Tech, has been the type of tech journalist that I've been shooting for. Okay, where it's the 40-foot view. What does this stuff mean to you? What's the future of this? Where, perhaps even getting into analysis and some degree of, prediction of what's happening. A lot of prediction, and I'm right a lot of the times. So, but that's the kind of tech journalist, that I am. So anyway, so this is kind of a tech culture question. And so I like that. And I want to get into it. And it's, why do you think Silicon Valley will be the next Detroit? And that's kind of the breakdown of it. So I've talked about this a few times on Sovryn Tech over the years, and I'm not the only one. There's a ton of people that know, including people that live in Silicon Valley, that know that there is a tech bubble coming, that these crazy valuations that companies are selling for just cannot last. Like this is a this is a beast that cannot continue on, right? And people are saying, "Oh, is this the new .com bubble, blah blah blah." In fact, I dare argue that blockchain technology has largely postponed the popping of this bubble. That Bitcoin really, just point blank, has had to deal with that. Has led to why it hasn't, really popped yet. But that time is still coming. And I think that, the Bitcoin space, the blockchain space and all this, I do think that it's still going to, it's going to survive this tech bubble, but that's largely because a lot of the, Bitcoin developments and blockchain developments aren't happening in Silicon Valley. So I think they can survive. But Silicon Valley itself, just the city of San Francisco is just, it's out of this world if you're not making, honestly, millions of dollars. Like, to try even to be able to live in various parts of it. So the reason I think that Silicon Valley will become the next Detroit is because it's two things. One is there's a tech bubble, which everybody's talked about, so I don't have to get it, I don't think I have to get too deep into that. And so that's going to, and the tech bubble really, well, okay, let me explain a little bit more about that, because this doesn't mean that Microsoft's going to go away, that a bunch of these other companies are going to go away. It doesn't really mean that. What the tech bubble means is that all of these startups and startup culture is just going to die. Okay, like it's just going to go away. In my opinion, at least in the United States of America. In fact, most of the best coders, it's now a fact. The best coders are not in America. The best coders in the world are in New Zealand, Russia, and China. That's where all your best coders, hackers, all that, they come from those three areas. And, maybe Switzerland and Sweden are, bringing up the rear, in Israel. But the United States is falling very much behind. And I think a lot of companies are building offices. There's a lot of offices in Israel, like Intel, Microsoft, all these different companies have offices in Israel. There's a lot of companies, building offices abroad because I think they know what's coming. So these startups are going to be going away. Maybe some companies are buying up a lot of startups because they are also trying to kind of stave off for, I don't know what, at what point they think it's okay for this bubble to eventually pop, because it does need to pop. Okay, there's too many Me Too companies for this not to pop. I don't know what exactly when they're trying to hold off this pop until, but it's going to happen. Again, Bitcoin is kind of holding it off. A lot of startups getting bought out by larger companies, like Google and AlphaGoog, and Apple and all that, are kind of holding it off, but that can't happen forever. Okay, eventually the piper's got to get paid. No Pied Piper joke here either from the show Silicon Valley, as much as I love that. But I think it'll become the next Detroit because it really won't be able to recover from that. Because also there's a lot of government money going into Silicon Valley, and there's going to be a point to where the flow of that is going to stop. Just like when you look at Detroit, and Detroit is the great analogy, because you had the car industry that eventually just got regulated out of itself. There was problems with taking money from the government. In fact, the government had to already step in and save Chrysler and all this. So you have, it is a great analogy to look at that. And really, the car companies, the ones that are doing well, like Toyota and others, they're not in Detroit anymore. And I think that's going to be the same thing that'll happen, is that, a lot of these companies are going to survive, but they're not going to be based out of Silicon Valley anymore. They're going to be based out of wherever they are. I've specifically said that the companies that are based out of Washington State, out of Redmond, and others, like Amazon, Nintendo of America, Microsoft, they're going to be fine I think when this tech bubble pops. I cannot say the same for Apple or AlphaGoog or others. And you can say they have all the money in the world. I know. Okay, but that doesn't mean that they're going to come out looking the exact same or handling business the exact same way when this tech bubble finally happens. It's really, yeah. So that's my prediction, is just that this tech bubble is going to pop very soon. There's certain things holding it off temporarily, but it is going to pop. And then I don't see people, the companies that are going to survive. The coders are just going to move, and they're going to move for a bunch of reasons. One is because when it pops, they're not going to be able to afford San Francisco prices, so they're going to run up to Washington State. It's just a drive up, and you can say, well, then the cycle will begin all over again. The market's going to speak, and, people are going to charge crazy, amounts for housing and all this shit. Well, looking at the future, a few years down the line, Amazon's buying up huge swaths of Washington State. And they're building out, they're renovating, a lot of buildings and everything. I mean, they could get to the point to where they could be housing all of their employees, So then there isn't like this crazy cost of living, around there, because these companies will create effectively their own little corporate towns up there. So, yeah, I don't, when it happens, it's going to be bad, and honestly, like Bitcoin is going to come in and swoop in and save the day. And Bitcoin, largely, like I said, is not based out of Silicon Valley. What's happening in Bitcoin is happening all over the world in a lot of different areas. I still subscribe to the idea that Bitcoin could be worth $10,000 a coin by 2018. I still subscribe to that. I'm not the only person that's thought that way. Tim Draper talks about that. He gave it a 3-year timeline. And, 2018 would be when the time's up. I think that's coming. Bitcoin's not going anywhere. It's happening really fast. And I sit in a lot of, I check out a lot of different projects. Some projects for some of the work that I do for other people, require me to sit in on meetings and all this. And most exciting developments happening right now largely are blockchain agnostic, because they want to take advantage of Ethereum. Whatever, I'm not going to get into Ethereum, but they want to take advantage of Bitcoin, or they want to take advantage of something else that's coming down the pike. In fact, I had a lot of people email me about IPFS choosing Ethereum over Bitcoin. I will save that for Sovryn Tech proper this week for episode 195, so bear with me, okay? I'll get into that later. But anyway, that seems to be what's happening. So my prediction that you're going to end up with thousands of currencies, or thousands of blockchains anyway, down the line, I think it's going to become a reality. That's the direction that things are going, and a lot of these back-end projects are going to, be able to be interoperable with all of these different blockchains, which is really exciting. Some of the stuff that's going on, even things that industries you wouldn't expect it to come from, like the music industry and some other areas like that. These things are really, really happening, like .bc and some others. Anyway, I hope that that answered the question. It really just comes down to the tech bubble, which most people agree is on its way. I have theories as to why it hasn't already happened. It's just kind of being held off, but that can't be held off forever. And of course, the fact that I don't think that San Francisco itself and that area is going to be able to survive. I don't think it, not as it is. And there's going to be a mass exodus, Moses is going to be leading people through the waters. Whoever the coding Moses happens to be. But speaking of that, I really appreciate a lot of people enjoyed this week's episode 194 of Sovryn Tech, where I got into some history, some biblical history. And if you want to ask deeper questions about that, the Q&A here is a great place to ask about that. Go ahead and ask me, and I'll line it up. I have a lot of Q&A episodes already kind of planned out, because I get a lot of questions, but keep asking them, okay? Because maybe sometimes something exciting will happen that tickles my fancy. And I want to talk about it on the show. In fact, there might be one that I'll get into later on in this episode. Anyway, but I might not get to it, so I want to have some fun with some geeky stuff too, because people really seem to love that. But let's get to another question here. This is a good one. This is the one I want to take some time on. What are your favorite security programs? Okay, so to read the full question here, what are the top privacy/security programs you would download if you got a fresh PC today, Windows, Linux, or other? Or to put it more specifically, are there any preventative measures to take to limit your exposure to viruses/malware that you might come in contact with, or to catch them when they appear on a PC? Okay, this is a huge question. It's a great question. And it's one that needs to continually get updated, okay? Because even when I started Sovryn Tech 4 years ago, I was still recommending some antivirus software to people. What I was recommending was ESET, just ESET, because they had a great gaming mode. And of course, I'm a gamer, so that's important to me. But today, especially with Windows 10, if you're using Windows 10, I do not recommend on any platform you use, do not install any antivirus software. Do not install anything of the sort. The only software I might recommend that you put on is Malwarebytes, because it's just a really tight-knit team with Malwarebytes, and if I think of it, I'll put a link in the show notes for Malwarebytes, but you can find them. But they do such a great job of trying to stay on top of things, and specifically with malware, that's more attractive for 0 days. So they're about the only ones I'd ever use, but even them, I don't really recommend it. There's so many 0 days. This stuff is getting found out so, behind the scenes, and companies are hopefully, and a lot of the big ones are dealing with them as soon as they can, and they fix them pretty much instantly. I mean, we're getting updates so fast. Part of the reason like that antivirus software and some other ones used to be a big deal was because we didn't really even have the internet, and you didn't have things, we didn't have the the ubiquitous internet that we have now, to where, you could constantly update the operating system. It used to be a big deal to push out, a lot of updates for operating systems. And to some degree, those still happen, but largely they don't. And antivirus companies could, because they didn't have to update the entire fucking operating system, with what little internet was had, or even pre-internet where you would send it, I don't know, like maybe you'd have to do it through a disk or something, but then how would you get the virus? Well, that's a long story, but anyway, that's a long story. But, it was more easily transmissible for just an antivirus software to handle everything. But today, that's totally different. Now everything's so OS level, just let Microsoft, Apple, and, and of course Linux, and others, let them handle that aspect of things, okay? And they do. Windows Defender is built into Windows 10, and they know best. They really do. I'm not saying to trust those companies with your life or anything. I'm just saying that as far as antivirus and all this shit, just let it be. Let them do their thing. So I absolutely do not recommend installing any kind of security software like that. And if your computer comes with it, get it uninstalled as fast as you can. Bloatware is a huge problem, especially with budget PCs. With Linux software, you don't really get that. Not really. Ubuntu is, having some shady dealings with Amazon, but largely, you don't get any of that stuff. But on a Windows machine, get fucking rid of it, as soon as you can. With Mac, so Mac is kind of the easy, I don't have to spend a whole ton of time talking about this with Mac OS. If you buy a MacBook or whatever, you don't have to install anything. And please just use Apple software. I'm not saying Apple software is the best stuff on planet Earth, overall, but it's all so tightly baked in now, and Apple is going so much towards becoming a services company. Just use their shit. And use Safari. Safari is a great web browser. And I mean that. Safari is a great web browser. I actually miss the fact that it's not on Windows anymore. I rather enjoyed the fact that it was. So, not much to do on the Apple side of things. Just run with things as they are. Linux, well, let's go into Windows, because this is where it really, there's actually full-on answers kind of to talk about. With Windows, maybe the best thing to do is the first thing to think about, and actually this goes true for pretty much any operating system, but for some it matters more than others, is to think about the web browser. Okay, what web browser are you going to use? Now, as Edward Snowden kind of immortally said, when it comes to choosing web browsers, there's one that's great for privacy and there's one that's great for security. And you got to choose which one you want. Do you want privacy or do you want security? If you want better security, from the run-of-the-mill bullshit that happens on the internet, obviously Google Chrome is the best web browser out there. Number 2 in that ranking is not Firefox. Number 2 is Microsoft's Edge is the best as far as that goes. Now, as far as the best for privacy, you want to use Firefox, hands down. There's no debate on that's the best one. I mean, if you want to get into the minor browsers, like if you want to talk about using SeaMonkey or IceCat, or Pale Moon, things like that, those are fine. But if you want to use those, I assume you're already at a certain level anyway, to where you're handling your own security very well. So if you want like full on privacy, you want to run with Firefox. If you're looking more for security, you want to be going with Chrome. Or honestly, it's to the point now, I'm very impressed with, and again, if you're using Windows, you're already in. Okay, I'm very impressed with Microsoft Edge at this stage in the game. It has improved significantly, and it has a lot of, because after you decide what web browser you want to go with, then it comes down to, okay, what extensions do you install? Well, now Microsoft Edge has extensions, and it has a lot of the good ones. It has LastPass. It has... I don't know. There's a slew of them. But now they're starting to put in the ad blockers. And while uBlock Origin hasn't been released yet, it is coming out officially in the next... I would assume it'll be out in the next couple weeks, because they announced that and Turn Off the Lights at the same time. And the Turn Off the Lights, and that was just a few days ago, and the Turn Off the Lights extension just got released officially, like yesterday. Okay, so we're recording on 9/28, on September 28th, 2016. So on the 27th, literally, it just got announced that it was coming out. So, just after it was said that it would be, going out to fastering and all this stuff, with Windows 10. So I would assume uBlock Origin will be out in short order. That is the very first, and perhaps for some, only extension I recommend you run on whatever web browser you use. If you're using Opera, if you're using Firefox, if you're using Edge when the time comes, if you're using Google Chrome, Chromium, whatever the fuck you're using, you put uBlock Origin on there right away. Okay, because protecting yourself from ads is just so key. And if I'm starting from a basic point, this is kind of a broad question, so I'm just going to run with it. If I'm starting from a basic point, I'll get into maybe some deeper tricks to do here in a second. Okay, but you've got to protect yourself from those ads. And as I always say, it is not your fault. Okay, like a lot of websites say, please turn off your ad blocker. This is how we get funded, blah, blah, blah. That's not your problem. Your number one priority, okay, as I'm going to use this term, I don't like the word citizen, but I'll use it. As a citizen of the internet, okay, as a computer user, your singular priority is securing your machine. That's the point of this question. It is not your priority to worry about how TechCrunch gets paid, how, whatever website, how Wired gets paid, or any of them. And you don't owe them anything. They need to work with you. You don't need to work with them. Okay. They rely upon you for their business. Well, then they need to find out the most secure ways to advertise to you. I don't think there's anything wrong with advertising. It's just, let's be clear here that the way that that a lot of these websites do advertising can be malicious. Like what happened with Forbes, right? To where Forbes wouldn't let you get into their website if you had an ad blocker running. Once you turn the ad blocker off, one of the ads that they were pushing on people was malicious. And it proved the point. No, this is why we run ad blockers. Okay? So don't listen to these fucks when they say to you, well, please look at our ads, please turn off your ad blocker and all that. No. The security of, not that you need to be altruistic in anything, okay? You're an individual. But the security of the individual directly reflects the security of everybody else using a computer and using the internet as a whole, okay? So lock your shit down. Let TechCrunch figure out how to advertise to you. Let Wired figure out how to advertise to you. Let all of these companies figure out how to advertise to you. Do not turn your ad blocker off. Okay? And if they ever give you shit about it, you tell them that that's not your job. That's their job to figure out. They pay people to do that shit. So anyway, so ad blocker, huge aspect of securing a machine. Choose your web browser, and because and this is step one. Really, the web browser is step one because that's how you're going to go download all of this security software, right? Even if you wanted to put security software onto a machine. So think about that first. Get your hands on what web browser you want to use first, okay? And as soon as you have that web browser, you put uBlock Origin on it right away. Okay, don't waste time. Get that shit on there. Okay. So if Microsoft Edge starts using uBlock Origin, great. Use Microsoft Edge. It's secure. They're doing some really good things by starting from square one again. By starting from scratch as far as the web browser goes. Okay. If you're already using Windows, please. Because that's another aspect of securing things down. So you likely have a Microsoft account, especially if you have Skype or something like this. Okay. Keep your accounts to a bare minimum. You're probably going to need a Google account. Okay, you don't have to have a Gmail account, but you're going to need a Google account. So you have a Google account. You're going to have a Microsoft account. You may need an Apple account. Keep track. Look at how many accounts you have. Be careful with that. You're going to need an Amazon account probably. Okay, but keep your eye on these things. Think about that. How many accounts you have. And since you already have a Microsoft account, now you can log into, like, say, Windows 10 without using your Microsoft account. There's benefits to not doing that, but then there's certain benefits to having your Microsoft account attached, especially with what's coming up with UWP and a lot of this different stuff. UWP is the universal apps, okay, that run off of the store. I don't necessarily see the advantage of if you are going to, so here's okay, so let me backtrack. If what you were doing, and this is a setup I've recommended for people, you buy, you have a Linux machine and you have a Windows machine. The Linux machine is where you do most of what you do. The Windows machine will be maybe where you game or maybe run Photoshop. Okay, but otherwise it's a dumb machine. You don't do anything important on it. You just do those couple things. Okay, so if that's all you're doing with that, then yeah, don't log into Windows 10 with a Microsoft account because you're not doing anything Microsoft related, or you're not doing anything serious on there. Gaming is serious, but you know what I mean. You're using it for gaming, and you're using it for maybe Photoshop or something. In which case, you just need to put a Steam account on there, and you need to put, an Adobe account on there, right? Nothing more. Keep it stupid. If you can do this, if you can do the separation of machines, that's great. If you have to do everything in one, I don't really see, if you're going to use a Windows machine across the board for everything you're doing, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. Get shit done. The most important thing is that you can get shit done. Okay? Then just use your Microsoft account. I really don't. It's not a headache to set it up otherwise, but I just think that you might as well do that. So with that said, now you're going to have the Microsoft Store. So we got our web browser set up. Okay, you got an ad blocker put onto that. We could talk about running NoScript on web browsers, which block a lot of JavaScript and all this stuff. It's getting to the point to where JavaScript blockers literally break the internet. And so I'm kind of inclined to agree. Even a lot of stalwarts like Steve Gibson, who said block that JavaScript no matter what, and just approve each website as you go along. Admittedly, it's getting to the point where that's really not possible anymore, or that's not really practical. You're going to spend days, if not weeks of your life just constantly dealing with verifying a website and, turning NoScript off on a website and all this. So, if it was a new machine, that's not something I'd be installing on there. But again, the ad blocker, fuck yes, in very short order. HTTPS everywhere, while we're talking about extensions, quick. This is from the Electronic Frontier Foundation. You can put it on there. You can put it on your web browser, and they have it for pretty much every web browser you can think of. But most websites now and most web browsers now are so favoring, SSL, so favoring going to HTTPS for every website that it's kind of redundant. And having, this gets into a very important part of securing a brand new computer is that, you want to install as little as possible. Okay, and that goes true for the web browser. That goes true across the board. Use as little software as possible, because every piece of software, every extension is potentially an exploit, is potentially a gateway to other parts of your digital life, your data, and all this. Okay, so be very specific in what you install. Be very deliberate in what you install. So I kind of feel like HTTPS everywhere is, again, it's sort of redundant. So I don't know that I'd be putting that on there. Some people ask about Ghostery, putting the Ghostery extension on. Ghostery still collects all of your metadata and data. I don't see a real advantage to putting them on, especially when you're using uBlock Origin. So I would largely, just stick with running with uBlock Origin. I could get into other extensions kind of, that I use, but a lot of them are they're just fanciness. They don't really, they don't really do anything otherwise. Now, the guy that makes uBlock Origin has some other extensions that he runs based upon whatever browser you have. You can install his entire suite if you want to, but that's really, that's up to you if you want to put any more of that stuff on. But there aren't a whole lot of extensions that I recommend. If you want to get into PGP, encrypting your email, the easiest way to do that is through the web browser. And if you're using Firefox or Chrome, you have Mailvelope. It's just the word mail and then envelope, like mail envelope. Mailvelope, that is, I'm not going to talk about the setup on here, but that is the absolute easiest way to set up PGP encryption with email. Okay, if you want to just do it through the browser. Now, if you have a bunch of email accounts, of course, I don't even recommend doing email through the browser. I recommend downloading Thunderbird. Here's the next trick that you want to install. Whether you're using Chrome, no matter what you're using, this isn't like something that has to work with Firefox. Thunderbird is the premier email client in the world. It is the one to use. It is not as supported, or it's not as developed, I should say. Like the development teams are kind of rocky with it. I wish it was more, there's more developers on the case with Thunderbird, but Thunderbird is phenomenal. And in fact, on Thunderbird, you can also install uBlock Origin because Thunderbird uses add-ons. And I totally recommend going and doing that. And then with Thunderbird, you can install Enigmail. That's ENI, Enigmail. And that is a great setup for PGP as well. So Thunderbird is a quintessential piece of software. Do not use, as much as I may recommend using perhaps some of the apps like on a Windows machine that Microsoft pre-installs, Thunderbird is just so good. It's so solid. I totally recommend, going forward and using that, especially if you're going to do PGP on multiple accounts. By all means, please use Thunderbird for that sort of thing. Now, outside of that, this is where it gets into, installing for preference. Like, okay, so I'm a gamer, so then I would go on a Windows machine, I would start installing, I'd be installing Steam, Origin, not uBlock Origin, but EA's Origin, GOG.com, Uplay, and all this different stuff. Then I'd be getting into that. There aren't, as far as depending how far you want to go with this, how far you want to secure things. Like really the way to secure a machine today, you don't download a bunch of security software. What you actually download is perhaps software that does network monitoring and all this, like Networks, NETWROX, or Wireshark, and these kinds of things, to where you're looking at traffic. So that way you can see if something strange is going on. Like, wait a minute, where is all this data traffic coming from? What the hell is this? Blah, blah, blah. I'm telling you, I keep it lean and mean. The best thing you can do today is just look for odd behavior, and then you'll have to figure things, kind of figure things out from there and see if a certain piece of software, is somehow doing some kind of odd traffic, and you found out that was the exploit, right? And that's huge because, this goes part and parcel with having as little software as possible, because if you have as little software as possible, installed, then it's very easy to find out which software may be causing you some kind of trouble, and having, a smaller amount of, less installed in the first place is going to allow your computer to run a lot smoother and faster anyway. So you're getting PGP set up. If you want to use a lot of communications, I recommend Pigeon. Pigeon does great because it handles IRC, it handles a whole bunch of different aspects, and you can install OTR off the record. There's a plugin for that within Pigeon. And I recommend Pigeon whether you're using Linux or Windows or whatever. For Mac, it's a whole different ballgame, but Mac users, you know what you're dealing with. Run with that. Thunderbird, Pigeon, that's quintessential software that I use. I totally understand, again, with the web browsers, stick between, Firefox or Chrome. You can go with Opera if you want. If you really, really want to, that's fine. And I understand some people love Opera. There's Vivaldi, which is another web browser I've talked about in the past. That's kind of new. You might want to give that some time because there's not like a huge company like Microsoft behind it or anything, to where I really don't mind recommending Edge, the Edge web browser, if you're using a Windows machine. So we've got that. One thing to think about, if you're using Windows, and this is only in the case of Windows, for Linux you'd have to install it in your web browser. If you're using Windows, I would consider grabbing the UWP app if you're using Windows 10, grabbing the Universal app within the Windows Store of either NPass or you could get LastPass as well. There's others. But either of those, they will have a desktop-wide, a system-wide password manager. Okay, and the nice thing about using with Windows 10, when you use universal apps, those UWP apps that you get out of the Windows Store are totally sandboxed, which is key to security. Okay, so if you're using a Windows machine, a lot of software, a lot of apps are now coming out in the Windows Store because Microsoft recently came out with Project Centennial. Okay, and what Project Centennial does is it allows people to easily convert a normal Win32 app into a UWP app. Okay, so the time could come very soon to where maybe Audacity would be a UWP app. Okay, and when you have that, when you have that all sandboxed, anything that goes wrong in one of these apps won't affect the rest of the apps. Okay, so if you're looking to use a password manager, I think grabbing one like LastPass or NPass or something like that out of the Windows Store on a Windows 10 machine is a great thing to do. So that's another thing if you want to set all that up. Of course, I love the little black book where I just write down my passwords in a little black book that I can set on fire. Blah blah blah. That's a great thing. There are other options out there. 1Password. There is KeePass, which KeePass is a great kind of. It's not necessarily a cloud model like the other ones I've described. KeePass is great because it's kind of locally stored, but it's a Win32 app, so keep that in mind. But I don't have any problem recommending KeePass either. So that's a lot of the directions I'd go with that is, consider using, if you're on a Windows 10 machine, using UWP alternatives to regular software that you've used. There's a trade-off there because, Microsoft can at any given moment just pull UWP apps from the Windows Store willy-nilly, as to where Microsoft generally cannot just pull a Win32 app that you installed from an XE that you downloaded off of a website, right? So that's kind of the trade-off, but if we're talking security here, that is a route to go because, again, every single app is sandboxed from the other, and it's a very, very secure setup to go with. But anyway, I think that covers... And if also, I know Sovereign Tech listeners, I have a lot of Windows users that listen to the show. So if you ever want me to do like a breakdown of great UWP apps to use for whatever, various things you want to use or want to do, I am happy to do that. For example, say you want to do torrenting. Okay, this could be a huge one, right? For torrenting, you have Torrex, Torrex. It's a great, very slick looking UWP torrent client. Now, generally, as far as torrent clients, I recommend using Qubit Torrent, which that's another great piece of software to install if you want. It's open source. I like it a lot. That's the one to put on. But Torx, if you just want to go the UWP route, is the direction I would go. Okay. And understand, that on a lot of systems, the torrent clients have been a gateway for all kinds of malware. So if you can sandbox it on Windows by using a UWP app like Torx, well, that's a great idea to do, right? And it is. So that's really, that I think that pretty much covers like what my set install would be. Preventative measures is software minimalism. Install as little software as possible. Okay. Use what comes with the system. Even with this is true with Linux, like a lot of the, Linux, Mac, Microsoft, or Windows 10, they come with so much software that allows you to do most of what you want to do out of the gate anyway. Just use it. But all right, so this made me think of one other that you want to install. Okay. And this is a big one. This is a big one. And I feel bad that I didn't think of it before. Install VLC Media Player. Okay, VLC Media Player. Now, there's the UWP app for that, but it's not as fully functional as the full app, as the full piece of software. But install VLC Media Player. Set it. This is true for Mac, for Linux, BSD, whatever you're using. Android, I don't give a shit. Windows, doesn't matter. This is an important piece of software to install, and I'll tell you why. Okay. And what you do once you install it, do your best to get everything, all of your media, your MP3s, your MOVs, your MKVs, whatever kind of media file you're running. Get that using, get that all to open with VLC, because VLC has all of its codecs that it uses to be able to read the files are all sandboxed within VLC. Okay, now it's kind of a double sandbox if you use the UWP app with Windows 10. Okay, but it sandboxes everything. That way, if you download a movie and the movie ends up being, like it's an MOV file or something, not that this is as commonplace as it used to be. 10 years ago, this is a huge issue. Even 5 years ago, it was a big deal. Okay, but you're downloading porn, whatever you're downloading. It will, if it's not actually a movie file, and it's some kind of, like hidden zip or executable or something, VLC will know that, and it'll just play it like gibberish. Okay, it won't warn you, but it'll play it like gibberish, and that way you know that what you installed is crap, and just go and delete the file, and VLC saved the day. VLC is as secure. It's practically security software, and how good it is at doing that. So do install VLC Media Player right away. Another, that's got me thinking too. Another PDF or another buried the lead. Another what used to be a common exploit, especially for Windows computers, but for all of them really, used to be like hiding links, malicious links or whatever in PDF files. That's really become unpopular. It's not something that gets done so much today. And really, the way to fix that is to use really any PDF reader besides Adobe's official PDF reader. Okay, don't use the Acrobat reader. Don't use Foxit either. They used to be the one I recommended was Foxit. Don't use that. If you're on a Windows machine, use Sumatra PDF, Sumatra. And if you're on a Linux machine, they already have there's already whatever distro you happen to be on, there will be a PDF reader already installed. So just use that, or you could just use your web browser. You could use Firefox or Chrome or whatever to read PDFs as well. So that's a little bit of an advanced one. So all of that might have sounded very basic, but so many people, they just instantly junk up their computers with a bunch of stuff as soon as they get one. Don't. Install, be super, super deliberate. Ask yourself why you're installing this. How often is it going to be used? What are you using it for? Ask yourself these questions. And I mean, you can have just an infinitely more secure machine the less software you put on something. And update often. Just update all the time. If you're on Ubuntu, go to the App Store and see if there's OS updates. Update instantly. With Windows 10, that auto updates anyway. So, let it do that. But I think that pretty much covers like what I would do the instant that I got a new machine, and I'd keep it that dumb. After that, it turns into preference, what you want to install. So then if you want to know more about that, you're kind of going to have to ask me like what particularly you would do. Like I do a totally different setup based upon what I do as a game developer and all this, where there's a ton of software that I have, not a ton, but there's a lot of different software that I install that no one else ever needs to install unless they're making games too. So anyway, I hope that answers your question. If you have more questions, just ask them, and we'll cover them in future Q&As. It's very important stuff to get to break into, and I hope that made sense, and my recommendations were solid for you. Okay, so we're coming in on the hour, and I don't like these to go too much longer than an hour. So I'm going to do a fun one. I'm not going to get into that historical question. We'll have to save that, but maybe I'll do it on the Sovryn Tech proper because it was a doozy. So here's a fun kind of a geeky question, and I love this. And it was pretty much just real quick. It was on Twitter, and it was, what do you think is the greatest soundtrack of all time? I dig that question, baby, because most people, I don't think they realize just how important soundtracks are. Like they don't realize how big a deal soundtracks are to to a movie. Like I think many times a soundtrack is like 50% of the movie. It really is. Now you have a problem with soundtrack. There's a difference. There can be a difference between soundtracks and scores. Okay. A score is all that instrumental stuff, right? That, or, maybe not so instrumental at times, that like if Lisa Gerrard's working with Hans Zimmer, is that really instrumental, but it's still the score, and she's singing her operatic stuff and everything. Lisa Gerrard, why am I saying that? Anyway, if you have, scores and soundtracks can be different things because you have the score like that. Then the soundtrack, sometimes the soundtrack can reflect what's in the movie, to where if the movie uses pop music or some popular rock songs or whatever, or the soundtrack could really just be a marketing tool to where they put a bunch of what it'll say is on the cover, like say if it was a CD, not that that's a thing anymore, but it would say music inspired by the movie, whatever the movie is. Okay. And then really the soundtrack would have almost nothing to do with what was actually in the film. So I'm going to refine this question a little bit to say that, because there's an answer. Well, I'll answer the non-refined version, but then I'll say, I'll refine it a bit. I'm going to, really point at the refined version of where we're talking more about the score or soundtracks that actually have songs that are a part of the movie. And as far as the greatest, I mean, that's kind of tough to call, and I'm really going to give a few answers here, and I'll try and give like an ultimate answer of all of it, but this is fun. So, because again, the music sets the tone for so much of the film. It's like when you watch, a horror movie, take out the music, take out the screams, right? And, take out the sound in general. And it's not that scary anymore, at least not really. I mean, sometimes it might be a little odd, what's happening, but you do lose a lot of the scarier aspects of it. Like I know when I go to watch, like if I'm watching a horror film, I can tell just by the crescendo of the music and everything that's going on, like when the music's going to do a duh, just like make that big pop, right? And so I'll actually cover my ears so I don't have to hear that pop, because I just find it annoying. It's like, all right, let's just get to the mystery of this horror film already. So I'm not even a big horror fan anyway. Some of the classics I like, I dig Freddy and, Friday the 13th and all that stuff, but whatever. Anyway, I'm not here to talk to you about horror movies unless you ask me to. So greatest soundtrack of all time. First off, I'll answer this question not refined, as in it can include soundtracks that largely have nothing to do with what was actually in the movie. And the answer is Hackers. Okay, but here's the catch. Hackers, now the first disc of Hackers, the first soundtrack that was released, because there was 3 soundtracks released for one movie, for the movie Hackers. Okay, the first one has a lot of music that's actually in the movie Hackers, and it's great. But the second and third ones, and the first one also, has a lot of music that's not in the movie at all, and it's all just inspired by it. But it's kind of reflective of the culture. The Hackers soundtracks are really kind of where it worked. Like where this bad marketing idea, or, well, it's not bad marketing because people are stupid and they fall for it. Okay, but this generally bad marketing idea of making soundtracks that have nothing really to do with the movie, it's just inspired by the film or something. It really worked for this because Hackers was, I talked about this, I think it was in the top 8. It was in, I did the top 8 movies actually it was a Patreon episode of Sovryn Tech. And I talked about it in that, to where, I said Hackers was crafting a subculture, kind of like Pumping Iron did with, bodybuilding back in the 70s. In the 90s, it crafted the cypherpunk movement in a real way. I'm not taking anything away from William Gibson, or Bruce Sterling or any of the, not Bruce Sterling, but, a lot of these different guys. I'm not taking anything away from any of that. Okay, I'm just saying, or Timothy, anyway. I'm not taking anything away from those guys. I'm just saying that Hackers really crafted a subculture with young people in the 90s and what it meant to be a hacker, to be a coder, all that stuff. Okay, so those 3 soundtracks are phenomenal. They're so good. I mean, they're just top notch. So they might take the cake as far as like the answer when you can include soundtracks that that might not, or that have dubious connections to the movie, right? Another one that might fall under that category would be Mortal Kombat. The Mortal Kombat movies all had multiple soundtracks. They had scores and they had soundtracks. They released tons of shit. Like there was that More Kombat disc, and they're great. None of the music's in the movies, has very little to do with Mortal Kombat, but they are kind of pictures of the time. And I think that makes them, really awesome to listen to. I still listen to all the Mortal Kombat soundtracks to this day, including like Mortal Kombat the album, which is based off of the video game. None of those songs were in the game except for Techno House, the Mortal Kombat theme, Mortal Kombat, right? Everybody knows that. Dun, 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 dun. I mean, just classic shit. That's become a part of Mortal Kombat lore, but largely, a lot of those songs had nothing to do with it, but it was still a great album. So anyway, there's kind of my answer, the unrefined answer on all that. Now, the refined answer, as far as like what is the greatest soundtrack and what is the greatest score and what is the greatest perhaps of both, meaning that soundtrack where there's, songs that were actually in the movie, or score where obviously it's totally a part of the movie. Okay, I'm going to give an answer to each of those, and then I'll give you an answer as far as, kind of maybe best overall on a lot of that. So best score, that's that's another one where it's tough. Like, it is a tough call. I mean, you want to say Star Wars, right? You want to say Star Trek. You want to say something by Jerry Goldsmith. You want to say something by John Williams. You want to say something by Basil Poldery. You want to say, you go down the list of the greats. You want to say something by John Debney or, Alan Silvestri, even the guy, Hans Zimmer, or the guy that really, that did Titanic. James Horner. I mean, come on, the late great James Horner. He died in 2015, sadly. Or Michael. I finally heard Michael. I was calling him Michael Gaetano. Apparently, it's Michael Giacchino. Or Giacchino. I keep hearing different ways this guy's name gets pronounced. I can't wait for him to say it somewhere. But you want to call scores from all of these greats, and they all really are. As far as the best one. But really, I sort of need to give the greatest score ever to a band. And it's score, all right. And it's Toto. And the score is Dune. I think that music is so ahead of its time. The score for Dune, and this is the David Lynch, the 84 Dune. I mean, that opening riff. That open dun 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 dun. I mean, that's just epic. And you had Brian Eno in there too. It wasn't just Toto, where Brian Eno did the prophecy theme and all that. I mean, even kind of the love stuff. I mean, the action, Like, it's amazing how great that score is. So a part of me, really wants to hand it over, wants to hand it to that because it was just that goddamn good. I mean, and yeah, there's Indiana Jones. I mean, it really is. It's just so tough to choose like what the greatest score is of all time. There's so many you could think of. I mean, even like some of Jerry Goldsmith's work, like the 13th Warrior, talk about a great fucking score. Or Stu Phillips's work on on Battlestar Galactica, the original Battlestar Galactica from '78. All right, so tell you what, if you get, if I get to choose, okay, if I get to choose what version gets released, there's a 4-disc. I have this, and I spent hundreds on it when I was a teenager. Okay, there's a 4-disc version of the Battlestar Galactica soundtrack. I still keep my MP3s of this. Okay, by Stu Phillips. If I could choose that would be the greatest score of all time. Like, just hands down. Like, it would even take Dune. It is so epic. There's so many different emotions covered in that score. And it was such a versatile score. Because Battlestar Galactica in '78 was such an expensive show to do, that, they recycled a lot of effects. They recycled a lot of music. They recycled lots of things. And you could use all of that all the time without it ever becoming really, how to put this? Without it becoming cliche. Like, I think with Star Trek, when you look at Alexander Courage's scores for the original series, a lot of his stuff kind of became cliche. Like, when there was a fight scene, you'd get the, and all that different stuff. And you just kind of knew what the music was going to be. But somehow, and granted, Galactica only went a season as to where Star Trek went 3. But somehow Galactica just didn't, it never got old. Like that music just, it always seemed fresh and pertinent to what's going on. So I might hand it off to that. If you were to break it up, in movie and, oh man, Star Trek The Motion Picture by Jerry Goldsmith, whatever people think of the movie, that score is amazing. That score is beautiful. Ilea's theme is one of the most beautiful things ever put to wood. Wood and strings. and what the unique things he did for the sounds of V'ger were phenomenal. God, it's all so tough, to choose one. Now, so I tossed all those out there. Okay, take your pick within all of that. As far as like best soundtrack, not score, best soundtrack, I'm going to give it to, and this might surprise some, and it actually shouldn't, because there's a reason that the soundtrack, I think it's still the best selling soundtrack of all time. And again, for good fucking reason. I'm going to give it to The Bodyguard. I mean it. And I'm talking about that Bodyguard with Whitney Houston, Kevin Costner. That movie was a phenomenon. And it's a good movie. I get it. It's a romantic movie, blah, 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 whatever. Fuck it. Okay, it was a great movie. And it was a great romance film. I mean, that had a lot of things going for it. But that soundtrack, holy shit. Right from the first track, when Whitney Houston does, and Whitney Houston just such an unfortunate life because an incomparable talent. When she opens up with, I Will Always Love You. I know it's not her song. It was Dolly Parton's. I get it, okay? I'm the Golden Stallion. Think I don't know this shit? Anyway. Please, I'm a cultural lexicon, just walking around New Hampshire. But anyway, when she, and I'm not even going to try to replicate it, but when there's that soft, like there's barely any music, you just got a little bit of strings underneath, and she does that first, I'm not even going to try it. Everybody gets chills when they hear that. That's huge. And, just to think, you say to yourself, there's no way, that song was such a huge hit. How could you do more? That soundtrack's track for track. You get some Kenny G on there. You got a little Aaron Neville. And then her other songs on there, Queen of the Night. Queen of the Night's a badass fucking song. Break out the guitar on that shit. That is so good. That's a metal anthem, for fuck's sake. Yeah, Queen of the Night was fantastic. Hell, even I'm Every Woman. There's so many great songs on that. Even her rendition of Jesus Loves Me was fucking epic. Okay? And I'm an atheist. But, I've got to give it the best soundtrack ever for damn good reason. I've got to hand it over to that. Just incredible, there's lots of great soundtracks outside of that. I think Paul Herzog and Stan Bush's work with Bloodsport or Kickboxer. Those are great soundtracks. I don't want to take anything away from those. Here's a great soundtrack put together even. In fact, Bill Conti, which, when you're talking about great scores, you cannot not talk about Bill Conti. This is the guy that did the score for North and South. Yeah, I mean, that classic little opus. Na, 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 na. Fantastic. Patrick Swayze rocking it. North and South, he also did, of course, the Rocky theme, Gonna Fly Now. That's Bill Conti. But Bill Conti scored The Karate Kid. Oh, and the music and the score for The Karate Kid are both fantastic. Bill Conti, really takes to the heights with that. Some of the, like Joe Esposito's "You're the Best Around," which if you ever listen to Puke and the Gang, you hear that a lot. That's awesome. Like the Bananarama's "Cruel Summer." Just tons of great shit on that. But that's kind of a hybrid work to where they're both really great. To where the score and the soundtrack are just phenomenal. That might even take top spot as far as best overall around. But Bodyguard's right up there. In fact, Alan Silvestri's work on, if I didn't already say this, his work on The Bodyguard was phenomenal as well. Man. Yeah, kind of best overall where there's sort of that mix of, say, a song, of singing and scoring. You know what I'm going to give it to? I'm going to put this one. It's not one that I've already listed. I'm going to give it to Highlander. The original Highlander from '85 with Michael Kamen. I couldn't think of it. Yeah, Michael Kamen, who also, he did the great work of working with Metallica for their S&M double live album. But Michael Kamen's score in that is epic, and Queen's work. Princes of the Universe, are you fucking kidding me? I still listen to that song and get chills. Who Wants to Live Forever? It's tough to find somebody that doesn't cry when they listen to Who Wants to Live Forever. That's huge. So best overall, where it's a great soundtrack and a great score at the same time, yeah, I think I've got to give it to Highlander. The whole Highlander, I don't talk about it enough. Sometime, if someone asks me, maybe I won't just talk about it, but if somebody asks me, what Highlander has done for my life, my history with Highlander, not that I was on the production team or anything like that, but I have been a fan for a long time, but it changed in many ways changed my life. Highlander, the series was so great. The movies are so great, even if the Renegade version of Highlander 2 is kind of fun. I don't talk about Highlander enough, and I don't think the world talks about it enough. You're talking about the second, when it was running, it was the second most popular show on the earth. Right, it was top at the time was Baywatch. People don't realize they're too busy watching NYPD Blue and filling themselves with shit, to recognize that around the world there were shows that were huge, and they were genuinely great shows. Baywatch and I love Baywatch. That's another boy. Talk about a great soundtrack. If you ever get your hands on the Baywatch soundtrack, Hasselhoff's music on that is great. They also get the guy from lead singer from Survivor and all they're singing on there. Jamie's great. It's all fantastic. So anyway, so there you have it. If outside of the refined, I got to give it to Hackers. Honorable mention to the Mortal Kombat soundtracks, and then with the refined search, best soundtrack, I got to give it to The Bodyguard. It's so fucking good. If The Matrix had more songs in it from the Matrix soundtrack that were actually in the movie, I might have given it to that because that was pretty badass. But Bodyguard, honorable mention to the Karate Kid. As far as scores, motion picture, Dune, and the Battlestar Galactica TV soundtrack. I didn't even separate it by TV and movies, but maybe I should have. But those stand tall. But then standing tall above them all is the Highlander soundtrack. Just a fucking masterpiece. Michael Kamen outdid himself. Queen just did what they do. Oh man, huge Queen fan too myself. But anyway, okay, enough of that. I feel like I've been rambling. And, don't hesitate to send critiques on the Q&A episodes. Let me know. I mean, because you are effectively, in many ways paying for these, which is why I let you control the content. But, if you're looking for something more, if there's something more meaty perhaps or whatever, let me know, okay? I aim to please here. I really do. And I'm so honored because you really, the Patreon subscribers, you really afford me to put so much more time into Sovryn Tech and to allow it to grow. And it has grown significantly, especially in the past couple months. I know it sounds like I keep saying that, but because it keeps happening. It just, the show just keeps growing, and it's phenomenal, the people that are coming into this. So I really appreciate that. Anyway, thank you so much. Of course, new episode what we got, 195 coming up. Holy shit, I've already got it planned out. So barring any major catastrophe happened, I can tell you we're in for a great show this week, and I really appreciate a lot of people enjoying the past couple episodes as well. And actually, I will be, when this gets released, just a few hours after this gets released at 9 p.m. Eastern, I'm going to be on the Crypto Show. If you don't know the Crypto Show, it's based out of Austin. And we're going to be talking some stuff up on that. I'll be on there for 2 whole hours live. I think they have a call-in line. So if you hear this, if you happen to listen to this right away, and I know there's a lot of people that listen to these episodes as soon as they come out, if you hear it, you might be able to catch me tonight. If not, I will be releasing it in the feed as well if you just want to catch it then. But the Crypto Show, keep an eye on my Twitter, if you want to, because I'll put a link out for to where you can listen to the show. But they're great show, the Crypto Show. They're on radio. They're all over the place. So that'll be a real honor. Anyway, Carpe Lucem, everybody. That's enough of that. Don't forget, we're on our season's break for Sex and Science Hour. So Friday, there will not be a new episode. I'm going to be releasing something, but there won't be a new Sex and Science Hour for the next 3 weeks, and then we'll barrel right into season 3, and it's going to be a great time. So Carpe Lucem, everybody. Woo! I'll see you on the other side.
You just experienced Sovryn Tech. Go to sovryntech.com, that's SOVRYN tech.com, and connect with us there. Find links from today's show and catch our podcast feed. Sovryn Tech is copy heart. Copying art is an act of love, and love is not subject to law. So please share the show however you like. Welcome to the evolution.